So last week I was excited to receive a message that Perplexity had released Labs, which is an agent that can turn your ideas into documents, slides, dashboards, and more. So I'm going to do a reaction video to that agent, and I'm going to basically give it one of my Monte Carlo simulation models, the Python code, and some of the data, and see what it makes of it. And can it build a dashboard that allows me to interact with it? I've no idea what's going to happen and if this is going to get anywhere near what I hope it will, but we'll try anyway. So I've quickly crafted a prompt that I'm going to pass to it. So I've got a main command where I'm asking it to analyze the Python that I'm giving it. And it's a Monte Carlo simulation model of the news vendor problem, the multi-period version of that. And basically I'm asking the agent to set up an interface so that I can run experiments and view some results. I'm giving it a number of files called newsvendor.py. That's well documented, and that contains all the classes and functions to run the model, an example in a script of how you run the model, and then some data files. There's a demand distribution depending on the type of day it is and the type of day distribution. So I was able to upload to Perplexity the demand data in a CSV file, but for some reason it didn't like the CSV for day type. I couldn't quite get that to work, so I've resorted to having it in Excel format to upload. So I'm asking Perplexity Labs to generate a web interface and allow me to manipulate that. I've given it some information on a particular class that it can use to infer parameters, and I would like it to output a plotly histogram, and I've asked it to validate that the model provides expected results. And again, I'm making Labs do all of the work here, choose its own method. So when you upload to Labs, you can just see everything uploaded across as files. So let's run it and see what happens. So we've been going for just over 5 minutes now, although Perplexity still tells me there's 5 minutes left to gather information. The agent's decided it's going to build a streamlit interface for the class. And we can see it's starting to pull some of that code together here. However, then underneath, it's effectively recoded the model in JavaScript. So we can see here, for example, a function to run the Monte Carlo simulation, which makes me think the final app will probably be something in JavaScript as well. So it's generated some results as it's been going along. So we can see here the mean profit, maximum profit, percentiles, etc. It's saying these are validation metrics, but I guess I would be expecting some form of comparison. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Okay, so from start to finish, that took about 10 minutes, and it's cranked out a whole load of assets for us to take a look at. There's actually two apps. There's one written in Python and Streamlit, and one written in JavaScript, and I'm not sure what framework it's using. But let's take a look at the JavaScript app first. So that's runnable straight away. You don't have to do anything. It's built into Perplexity. So we can see here that we've got parameters for the Monte Carlo simulation model down the side. And I can click on Run Simulation. That'll run 1,000 replications of the model. And we end up with some results pretty quickly. It's assumed that the values I gave it were in pounds rather than pence, but never mind. You just need to divide the figures by 100 to be comparable. And it produces a plotly chart. The figure here is slightly different. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. A little bit higher than I was expecting, but not too much higher. You can manipulate the distributions. So we've got the day type distribution here, so we can change the parameters there. We can update the distribution of demand, shrink that a bit on a given day. and we've got some input about the model as well as a randomly located model validation button. If we click on that, we get some model validation. It's not really clear what's going on there or why these are within expected ranges. However, the other thing that it produces is a quite nice streamlit app. So this will run directly with my Python model code, whereas the other example had translated that Python code into JavaScript. And I suspect there's quite a lot of room for hallucination there and a big job. However, this runs quite nicely. So if I run the simulation, I get results which are pretty much where I would expect them to be for 1000 replications of the model. I've got the ability again to have a look at my day type distributions and demand type. And I've got the option to modify there using some streamlit widgets. Again, we've got the model info and we can run validation. So it seems what it's done is it first coded a streamlit app based on the simulation model that I'd passed to it. It then translated both the model and the app into JavaScript, and you could immediately access that through Perplexity, which is pretty great. I have to say that I'm pretty impressed with that. I mean, I've used Perplexity to generate streamlit apps myself, but not in this level of detail. They've always been pretty simple. And they've always followed the kind of recipe that I teach for streamlit, but this is really great. I'm really quite impressed. So the other thing that you get with ABS is kind of like a deep research type report that goes along with it. I'm not a huge fan of deep research in Perplexity. I do think if anything's going to hallucinate, it's going to be deep research. I don't know why that is, but I find that it just makes stuff up, at least for my academic work, that just is not true. So what we've got here is a Monte Carlo analysis and web interface. So it describes the components of it and the modeling framework, gives us an overview of the web interface. What I wanted to get down to was the model validation. So what has it done for model validation? Rigorous validation procedures were implemented. I suspect it's being a little bit too confident in its own abilities there. It encompasses multiple statistical tests and cross-verification. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. So what has it done? Well, here's the parameters of that. Just verified that those parameters with my own model, and they do produce this chart. But it's a bit unclear actually where this chart comes from, whether it's coming from my Python code, i.e. through the Streamlit app, or if it's coming through the re-implemented JavaScript version of the model. And that's it. So that's not great model validation. I don't really understand what it's doing there. And I'm not quite sure what these expected theoretical bounds are. I think, to be honest, that's complete nonsense. So convergence and accuracy assessment, it's not being very clear about what it's done, but possibly it's just a comparison across the two models, the original Python implementation and the JavaScript implementation. That's fine. That's testing that your models perform as the same as each other. I think that's okay. Practical applications and decision support, risk analysis capability. So the rest of it is just complete waffle that doesn't really mean anything. But overall, I think this is a really exciting development from Perplexity. I've perhaps been a little unfair in my test, but it's really just an off-the-cuff reaction. I've just thrown some ideas at it and some data at it to see what it would do. And actually, I think it's done a really good job on particularly generating a Streamlit app for me. I suspect all the JavaScript stuff wasn't actually needed for a user like me. But for somebody else, I think that's quite a nice feature that you can immediately run with it. I just asked it to do a lot of things in one go, which to me is kind of the point of an agent. I want it to do a lot of things in one go, but we could also think about using it iteratively. So we could generate the app and then we could have our own validation procedure that we might want the agent to implement in order to test our model. And it looks like The tools available to the Perplexity Labs agent enable it to run both the Python code and the Java code. But what about if you'd like to code one of these models yourself the old-fashioned way by writing the streamlit code in an IDE? Well, fear not. You can check out this video on the screen now and learn all the skills you need to do that. I'll see you next time.